So what's going on with Lucas County taxes, and especially the home values? Seems to be in the news constantly, on social media, it's a buzz, and it's all coming from a reappraisal process that occurred in last year, 2024. I have some insights. I want to share some possible solutions and next steps and give you what I think makes sense in light of all these changes that we're seeing. Now, my theme is you ought to live where you can thrive. Part of that thriving is being able to afford the house that you're in. It needs to be comfortable and meet your needs in all kinds of ways, but certainly the financial aspect can kill that if it's something you can't afford. The big three are taxes, insurance, and the cost of the mortgage if you have one. Let me talk a little bit about this revision. We can until the end of March file an appeal with the Board of Revision in Lucas County, and they will schedule a hearing. It's a semi-formal, semi-quasi-legal process where we can make our case to 3 officials from the county that will then rule on whether our homes are overvalued and whether we've made a justified case on reducing our home value, which will ultimately make a new calculation on our taxes. And although our taxes have already been paid for the first part of this year, the 2025 bill was due at the end of January, that adjustment could be made, and it would be made for the future. In fact, it would have impact, if it's successful, for the next 3 years, and then there'll be a triennial update, but that will just be a computer calculation, a math add-on, or if values for some reason would go down, it could be a calculated reduction. But the base that was created last year on your valuation is some impact for the next 6 years. The other thing, you can appeal a year from now, but if you don't make it by this March 31st, you'll have to wait till January 1 of 2026, and then you can appeal. The other thing about appealing is if you do it now, you can't appeal again for 3 years. So keep all that in mind. And let me tell you what I think. I actually, on our first house that we bought 45 years ago, I was able to successfully appeal the value of that because it was new construction. Now that's a special case. For new construction, they look at how much of the house was completed on January 1st and then base all the numbers on that. And I made the case that the house was not very well completed on January. It was completed after the weather got better and so on and so forth. And I was successful. My hearing went well, and I got some savings for that brief period. Since then, I've helped some people with some changes. So let me go into some history. They say, I guess it was Mark Twain that said, history doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes. So I'm going to go back to 2006. Back then, Larry Kazala was the auditor. And at the time, if you recall, 2006 was when builders were building like crazy. You could finance anything if you had a heartbeat, and people were buying 2 houses if they could, even if they couldn't afford it. So it was just kind of the Wild West in home buying. Well, in 2006, that sort of started to peak, and we all know, hopefully, maybe if you're old like I am, you remember what happened in 2008. We had the financial crisis that was started with the collapse in home prices. So my point is, in 2006, they did this revaluation, which occurs every 6 years, and it was the year, and they ran the numbers, and they it looked to me almost like projected or extrapolated into the future and said, if we're going like this, we're going to keep going. And of course, that didn't happen. By 2007, things were going flat to south. And so there were some significant overvaluations. And I was able to help some people make a case. We can create, as an agent, we can create something called a competitive market analysis. It's not an appraisal. You need to hire an appraiser to get an official appraisal, but it's very similar, and I think it can be very valuable when it's well done. So I did help a few people back then. Larry Kazala was then voted out of office, unfortunately. I did not know Larry. Actually, I went to school with his sister, Sharon. Go Rockets. I would be curious, unfortunately Larry Kazala has passed away. I would be curious to get his take on all this. So moving on, the next auditor was Anita Lopez. And so Anita was able to successfully lower tax values for a number of people, and she did it aggressively. A number of people were getting tax values reduced or market values reduced fairly easily without a lot of information. And of course, it's passed now, but back in September of last year, we were able to do an informal review. And things have changed. We have a new auditor. And it looks like the informal reviews that happened last year up to September only generated about 13% of favorable reductions for the homeowners. Now, I don't have data for Anita Lopez, but I suspect she was giving 80 or more, 80 or 90% of the people that asked for reductions were getting some kind of reduction. So now, moving forward, about a year ago, Anita Lopez left office. It was vacant, and Katie Moline was appointed to that position in the middle of this revaluation year. Probably not a great time to jump into the new position. Now, Katie, I've seen her personally twice give presentations. I've had brief conversations with her, and I think she's a great accountant. She has a great CPA background, and I think she's honest, and I think she's doing what she can do. But the situation is clearly dictated by the state of Ohio. And so what has happened in 2024, the state and Katie agreed upon, they came to a compromise that said the average Lucas County home went up in value 29.5%. So let's call it 30% over the last valuation. Now, the market, I can tell you that that's probably reasonable. The market probably has gone up about that much. We had the COVID year, which really pushed the market. We had good interest rates, incredibly good interest rates. And even as we started to see interest rates go up in 2022, we saw values continue to go up because the market dried up. There were so few houses, and there was so pent-up demand that people were willing to go get the loans or pay cash and buy some houses. There weren't many, but that made it, the supply and demand said, if we have to pay more, we'll pay more. So that's what happened. We're still in a market that I would consider a seller's market. It's not as strong, and I would say the prices are fairly stable now. And we may go into the spring market and I think see some increases. I think the chances are good that the spring market will strengthen some pricing modestly, not like we saw in the last 4 or 5 years. So we'll see about that. At any rate, Katie Moline asked for, I believe, something in the 20% range. That might be 19 or 20%. The state of Ohio said, no, we got to go up some hot number above 30, and ultimately the best Katie could get was 29.5. And she's in a tough spot. If she does not make that work, if she isn't compliant with the state laws, they can withhold taxes, they can withhold funding, I should say, from Ohio to the local county projects that we have going. And that would be a disaster, so she's not going to let that happen. So her process right now is to do the best she can. Most of the numbers are in the, are set and calculated. But she does and is supporting the Board of Revision process and encouraging people that think they have a case to make a case. And she's out giving seminars and talking to lots of people on the process. And I have a couple thoughts on what to do if you want to do that. First of all, I've got a system from a company called Incenter, and we can plug in your address. For free, they will run us an analysis and say, we think your house may be overvalued, and we are willing to go to bat for you. Now that second step, going to bat for you, is at your option. That's not free. If they successfully lower your prices, they want a cut of the first year's savings. So you may or may not want to do that. You may or may not want to process your Board of Revision request through them, but it is there. My concern with them is most everything I see them sending back is saying, nah, we don't see any savings for you, so we are not interested in trying to process a Board of Revision case. However, the other part of it, I think, is they aren't going to take on a case unless they see hundreds or a few thousand dollars on the table to justify their lawyers and all their effort to make the Board of Revision process work for you. Now, they claim they have a really high success rate, I think 93% success rate, but that means they probably aren't going to turn down one that's got a 50-50 chance of saving you $500. I don't want to oversell this, but it is an offer that you can pursue. I'm going to give you the link that you can enter your data in and start that process if you're interested. But the other thing you can do is do your own evaluation. And let me give you some tips. Saying, and I've heard several people say this, I looked at my neighbor's house and their value is much lower than mine, even though we had the same builder. It's a similar size house, built at a similar time, and in fact, they may have a swimming pool and I don't, and my tax value is higher. That does not make a case for the Board of Revision unless that house recently sold, say in right around January 1st of 2024. If that house sold and it was an arm's length transaction, then it's a good comparison because it could be a comparable house that makes your house values look overstated. But just the fact that their tax value is low, maybe because it's a mistake. And so if it didn't sell, it may not count, it may not help you. But I would look at one of the things that's in your tax valuation, and I'll show you. If you can go into Aries, you can look up your home address. Aries is on the Treasurer's website, and you can look under residential attributes. And down towards the bottom of that page, I'll show you on the screen, is a line called grade. And grade has to do with the class of construction. So to get an A+, you probably have to have 3 feet cement walls like Fort Knox. And if you have I'll say a flimsy house, unfortunately, whatever they consider not particularly well-built house, you may get a D. So there's a lot of C's in there. And what happened when some of these homes were valued incorrectly, there were some C's that got incorrectly entered into a computer as A's. Well, that was a big change in their value. And there were over 1,000, I think there were 1,200 homes where that was the case. But I would double check your house, and if your house is B and all your neighbors were built by the same builder and are similar in construction, they're not brick, let's say they've got some brick on the front, but they're really frame houses with vinyl siding, they probably should all be rated C's or C pluses or something like that. And if they're not, I think that could be an argument when you go to the Board of Revision. That's the part of it. The other part of it is, can you find other comps that are similar in size and age and features? In other words, do they have basements? Do they have 2-car garages? Those kinds of things that would make them similar, and are they close? Are they in a similar neighborhood to yours, either by being close or being in maybe the same school district or elementary school district. Those are the comps that may help you make a great case. So if you can find homes that sold in 2022, 23, or early 24, and they are lower in value than your assigned value, use those and you can submit those. Now, you don't have to have all this data. You don't have to build your whole case to get your request filed by the end of March. But you do need to get that data into the Board of Revision probably a week before your hearing. So if you see the need to go ahead, but don't wait too long to make sure you've got your case. The third thing you can do is hire an appraiser. And I talked to an appraiser yesterday. He's charging at least $500 to do an appraisal, and that's kind of a challenge if you don't know how much you might get back. Your appraiser may come back and tell you you don't have a case anyway, and you've spent $500 to find out. But an appraiser will do an excellent job, give you a really strong case, I believe, if you go to the expense of hiring one. So finally, what else? What else makes sense? What I'm seeing are probably a lot of values are probably in line with the market. Katie Moline and the state of Ohio are saying that's what we really need to use. We need to use real market values. And finally, there's one other thing that you should be aware of, because I've seen on social media people saying, well, this is going to raise taxes 30%. If my home value went up 30%, my taxes will go up 30%. Well, they might go up for a number of reasons. One of them is because there's some new tax levies that passed. And so that is going to change your taxes in the upward direction. But the other thing you should be aware of is there's something called House Bill 920. And House Bill 920 is a way to take the inflation component out of higher inflated home prices. So all I'm saying is if your home value went up 30% because of inflation, House Bill 920 should mitigate most of that. And it'll depend on how your house measured. Did your neighborhood or your house go up faster than some parts of Lucas County? That will be painful. House Bill 920 should take some of the inflationary aspect out of your new tax bill. If you've got any questions, I'd be happy to help you. This is my longest video ever, and I hope it was meaningful. And I hope that you are successful. I hope you can afford your house. Some people are in a jam, and that's unfortunate. I intend to do another video on how different school districts in different locations would tax a house. My suggestion is subscribe, and when that video is complete, you'll be able to get a notification. In the meantime, put in what you think the ranking should be for the various communities and school districts. I hope you're doing well. I hope you enjoy this year. It's a great, prosperous year. Thank you for watching. Go slay some dragons, and we'll talk soon.